Hello, I'm Diane Trees. Mayor Buddy Dyer is Orlando's longest-serving mayor, having been in office over 14 years. His leadership guided all of us through the unbelievable events the night of the Pulse massacre. In his words, the darkest day in the city's history. He joins us now to reflect on leadership and priorities that have unfolded since that night, as well as changes he's witnessed in the city. Mayor Dyer, welcome.
Thank you, Diane.
Can you talk a little bit about the chaotic hours? Share with us after the shootings occurred. How did you set priorities?
Well, when I was notified of what was going on and traveled to the Mobile Command Center, my first thought was, what's my role? What role does the mayor play? And I thought about three things. One was to not get in the way of the law enforcement response. Two was to make sure that I supported and did not undermine Chief Mina's command in any way. And then the third was to gather as much information as I could, because I knew my primary responsibility when it was over would be to communicate to the public. And I knew that I would need to communicate factually concise information, that I would need to restore calm and let people know that they were safe. So that was my thought process. The gunman was killed about somewhere between 5 and 5:30, and at that point we in the command center believed that there were explosives involved, or at least there might be, because he had indicated that, and the bomb dogs had sniffed at his car indicating that there might be bombs. So we waited to have the first press conference until we could clear the building of any potential that there were explosives and his car, because we didn't think that having a press conference and having a car blow up in the background would create that sense of calm that we were trying to instill.
Right, so much uncertainty. And actually, the difficulty, how do you balance your own human response to something so horrific, knowing people are looking to you as the public figure? How do you keep that emotions in check and not become detached and withdrawn, at least appearing like that?
You know, I've thought about that a lot, and really you end up compartmentalizing and moving forward because you have a job to do. And I had a friend of mine who's a counselor call me about a week after Pulse, and she said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "You know, I'm doing fine." I heeded the words of some of the people that we've had in to talk to OPD and OFD, which is get back on your regular schedule. If you exercise, do that. Get the sleep that you need. Drink a lot of water. Eat what you normally eat to the extent you can. But I told her, you know, but the thing I'm not sure about is I'm not feeling the emotion that I anticipated I would feel based on the horrific events that we have been through. And she said, you can't. You're in the mode of providing leadership, and if you show emotion and break down, that hurts your ability to lead and comfort and heal this community. So don't feel bad about that. You're doing your job. You're doing what you should be, and it might be a month from now, it might be 6 months, it might be a year that you'll have time to reflect.
How would you describe your leadership style, and has it changed from what you dealt with that night?
I would describe my leadership style, I don't know if there's a term for it, but I like to surround myself with really good, talented people and then let them use their talent. So I'm more of a delegator. I will let them know what I want to see at the finish line, but then let them figure out how to get to the finish line. And I think that was helpful during the Pulse crisis, because so many members of my staff were doing jobs or things that they had never ever envisioned, because we had people that were manning the assistance center for weeks and dealing with victims and family members and people that were traveling. And I like to say that they were so far outside of their lane of responsibility that they couldn't even see the center lane of the highway.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you said before, you had different responsibilities. On the one hand, you were trying to console people who were grieving, and yet you had to also reassure Central Floridians that they were safe. How did you and your staff approach both really different kind of aspects of this?
You know, we do a lot of tabletop exercises in terms of being ready for emergency responses, either full scale outside active shooter type things, or tabletop exercises where we're in a room and the different department heads are there and responding. A lot of those that we do are preceding hurricane season and different aspects of responding either prior to a hurricane or after a hurricane. And in the wake of Baltimore and Ferguson, we decided to do a civil unrest exercise, and we created one that was white police officer shoots African American individual in Paramore while the National NAACP convention is in town, and a rapper is doing a concert at the Amway Center. So that's pretty out there, right? But we did a lot of things on that, but we also focused on communication during that time frame, because we have looked at some other communities' response. Baltimore is a very good example, and even Boston, where there was conflicting information during the course of that event. And we came up with some protocols on how we would communicate by using social media. So in the case of something like Pulse, OPD's Twitter feed became our primary means of feeding social media, and nobody in our organization was allowed to put out information that was not the same information that was being put out by OPD. And we were also monitoring social media channels to correct misinformation that was out there. And we got supporting agencies as well to use OPD's Twitter feed as primary means of information. And then we didn't have press conferences just to have press conferences. We would hold them if there was new information. So I think we had 3 press conferences the first day. So there was the first one, which was we thought it was really important to set the tone in those first couple of press conferences. So that was where we said we're not going to be defined by the act of a demented killer. We're going to be defined by how we respond, and we will respond with love and compassion and unity. And I really think that helped set the tone. It gave our community something to focus on. And I learned later, I didn't know this at the time, that most communities in the wake of a terrorist event will respond with either fear and or anger and hatred towards the participant. And our community, we were able to refocus them in a manner to focus on love and unity rather than hatred and anger.
Do you think that Orlando is an example now, more of a model? You talk about lessons learned, but do you think people are looking towards our city to really use us as a model?
I do, but all that did was shine a light on us. We were already that community. You can't create that on June the 12th if you had not been that community beforehand. And we've been a community that's embraced diversity and supported equality and fairness for a long time. So that really just shone through on June 12th. And then afterwards, it's not like we said, oh, we should embrace diversity now.
As mayor, what would you say were lessons learned from your perspective from all of this?
I can give you a couple that are that are more here's what we should have done type of thing.
But it sounds like you instinctively did a lot of things right. And
well, you know, there was a group called New America that was doing a white paper on communication in response to terrorism and how you act on that. And they were going to do it as a tabletop exercise, and Pulse occurred while they were doing their research. So they did an analysis of our response, and they gave us pretty good remarks. And it does turn out that without having done all that research and preparation, intuitively our team did respond in most cases. We didn't do everything right, but in most cases we handled it right. One thing that we didn't do, we set up an area to have the press conferences the first day. So we had the first press conference, and then we didn't have the second one. We said we'd do it every 2 hours if there was new information, and that became an open mic. Every politician that could drive here got there, and I think we would secure that area the next time around if we had that to do again.
Yes. You know, I think that you said before, our city has always been a certain way. Maybe the spotlight was not always focused on that. When you look at what occurred, and as time passes, you have a little bit more of the cushion, that sharpness of the pain. Do you think that the community spirit that we've seen come out, the focus on diversity, do you think that those will be ongoing? Do you think the changes, have there been changes, or is it just going to be ongoing and show what the city was able to
I
be?
think we were already that city, but I think there are a lot of people in Orlando and from across the country, really, that have changed a little bit in terms of their acceptance of people who are different than they are. And, you know, we're so diverse in our community, not just from a sexual orientation standpoint, but from an ethnicity, the various religions that we have here. And I think we're a very accepting community. And one part of that may be that we're, I don't want to call us a transient community, but most people weren't born here, right? They chose to come here. I happen to have been born here, but not everybody, or the vast majority, are not. So we're a place where people come for opportunity, whether it's educational or job related or quality of life, and they're accepted and they can become part of the community. You don't have to be third generation to be chairman of the chamber or something, right? So that's the type of community we are.
Mayor Dyer, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for your leadership throughout.
Thank you, Diane.
Pleasure to have you here.